Have you ever struggled to find storage deals, and when you do, you're not quite sure what to say? So you find the facility, you find the owner, you get the phone number, and then suddenly you start looking at the phone and fear creeps in, doubt comes up, and you're not even sure what to say. You don't want to sound like a rookie. You start to question yourself. You think about maybe imposter syndrome. You certainly don't want to come across like pushy or salesy or anything like that. And you start thinking, hey, I don't even want to ruin the opportunity before the conversation even starts. So if you've ever experienced or felt any of that, then I have the remedy, because I'm going to walk you through the direct contact blueprint, which is the exact framework that we use to reach out to storage owners, to start real conversations, uncover opportunities, and then build the kind of relationship capital that ultimately leads to deals, because that's really what this is about. It's about having meaningful conversations and building meaningful relationships. So with that said, let's go ahead and break it down in the direct contact blueprint. Hey, my friend, welcome back. If you have completed your market edge video and the cash flow maps exercise, amazing work. Now identified your markets, you have hopefully built your top 100 list and working towards your top 300 list and beyond, because we don't want to stop there. But that initial win is building your top 100 within the first week and your top 300 within the first month. And so now you know where mom and pop opportunities live. Now it's time to take the next step, and that is actually connecting with people behind those properties, right? It's what I call having meaningful conversations with these mom and pop storage owners, and understands that everything in this business at some point is going to involve having a conversation. And it's very difficult to build relationships with people if you don't have conversations, right? That humans are wired, we're meant to communicate, right? We're not meant to be in isolation. Why do you think, if you think about prisons across the world, isolation is a big form of punishment? And so we are meant to connect with people. And you might be thinking to yourself, hey, I am an introvert, that terrifies me, that scares me. It's okay, I got you covered. And so we're gonna talk about that here in this particular video. Because look, all the spreadsheets, the Google Maps, all the data in the world is not gonna move the needle unless you start having real, meaningful conversations. That's what this video is all about. It's giving you the confidence and equipping you so that you are ready to reach out and actually start having conversations with these storage owners. I always say, and something I share with our Storage Wins community and my coaching clients, is that think of the 5 C's, and that's conversations lead to conversions, conversions lead to contracts, contracts lead to closings, closings lead to cash, and cash leads to cash flow. So I think that might actually be 6 C's, and I'll even throw a 7th one in there. C for confidence, right? The more conversations you have, the more confident you're gonna get. The more confident you get, the more it's gonna lead to conversions, contracts, closings, cash, and ultimately cash flow. Those are the 5 C's of the deal flow. And in this video, the direct contact blueprint is gonna give you everything you need to be able to take action and start having your first conversation. And you might be thinking to yourself, Alex, I am not ready to have a conversation with a storage owner. I am telling you, you are 1000% ready. You have invested in yourself through the Cash Flow Maps course, and you might even be a part of our Storage Wins community. And you did so before you probably even felt ready. So perfection doesn't exist. We're not waiting for the stars to align. We're gonna take massive imperfect action. That's one of the things I said from the very beginning. And I am going to continue to encourage you to take that leap of faith, pick up the phone, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. But before we even get there, let me just set the frame and let me give you some tools. Let me equip you and hopefully give you some confidence. Let's talk about first why this works and why it's so important. Most people freeze at the idea of cold calling. And I don't even know that I like the word cold calling, right? Like, who likes a cold call? I don't really like to receive cold calls. And so you might have a mental hang up with that. But look, here's the truth. Don't look at it as cold calling. Let's reframe this. You're connecting with another business owner, because a mom and pop storage owner, that's what they are. They're a business owner. And most storage owners are actually some of the easiest and friendliest people to talk to. Generally speaking, every now and then, of course, you're gonna have the exception to the rule. You're gonna come across somebody who's rude or not the friendliest person. So what? Who cares? Next. That is the mindset I want you to have. In fact, if you haven't come across those people, you're probably not making enough calls, okay? So these mom and pop storage owners, they're business owners, and they're proud of what they've built, or they're proud of what they manage and own. and they're often running their businesses by themselves. And that represents a big opportunity for us who we're not going to run it by ourselves. We're going to run it with a solid boots on the ground team member, with systems and automation. We're going to have marketing systems in place, and we'll get to all that. But they are not as accustomed to getting calls from people who truly understand storage, at least if you compare it to the single family world, where residential homeowners are getting bombarded with cold calls and door knocks and direct mail and everything in between. When you think about a self-storage owner, it's a fraction compared to single family, okay? And I think that's what makes this particular strategy, the direct contact blueprint, so effective, is that number one, it just takes time, energy, and it starts with a decision and a commitment. So it doesn't really, outside of whatever you pay for your mobile phone bill, outside of that, it's free. So you don't have to go spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on this. And think about this, you are not chasing deals, you are creating them. One of the things I've shared is that people refer to finding deals, and I have come to believe, just in my experience, that most of the time you're not finding deals, you're actually creating them. And you're creating them one meaningful conversation at a time. So your goal isn't to sound perfect or polished. Again, perfection is not what we're striving for. In fact, we're striving for the opposite, massive imperfect action. I'll continue to harp on that. And so don't feel like you need to be polished, or don't feel like you need to be ready or have a certain number of reps in. You're going to get better through the reps and the repetition, okay? I just want you to be yourself. That should start to take some of the pressure off. Let's remove the pressure valve on the cooker here. You're not calling to get something, you're calling to understand something. And that is their business, their story, and maybe even their motivation if they might have an interest in selling you their facility. And that mindset shift alone can change everything. So don't think of it as a sales call. Don't think of it as a cold call. Don't think of it as you trying to buy their storage facility on that phone call. You're just trying to gain a better understanding, okay? And if nothing else, you make a friend, you might learn a thing or two about somebody who already owns storage. And that is not uncommon. In fact, with coaching clients that I have helped buy their first storage facility inside of our Storage Wins community, that's often been the case. Is that, in fact, I literally have somebody who joined our community, and within 31 days, now I share this with caution because this is not the norm, this is an anomaly, but 31 days after he joined, he put his first storage facility under contract for $1 million. By the way, he doesn't have $1 million. So don't suspend your beliefs about, oh, I don't have $1 million, Alex, but he took massive imperfect action. And here's the best part of the story. He has already built a connection and is starting a friendship with this seller. He spent 4 hours with him and his wife at the facility. He had some type of event on his farm, and the seller and his wife came and participated, and they're already super, super bonded. That's because he understands how to build relationships. He understands how to ask good questions, which we're going to talk about in this video, and really get to the heart of what the seller is after. So let's figure out how to open the conversation. How do we start the call? Well, my belief, and this is based on just a lot of years of experience and thousands and thousands and thousands of calls that I've made throughout the years, within the first 10 seconds, identify yourself. Share your name, why you're calling, and speak clearly, calmly, and confidently. Another 3 C's for you: clearly, calmly, and confidently. And there's a lot of, I'm not going to give you some magic script. In other words, I want you to understand and have just more of a mental framework, because here's the thing, there's no magic words. Despite what you might see on some other course or YouTube video or podcast, there's not a magic script, right? And I think when sometimes people try to follow a certain script, it doesn't sound like themselves. And yes, part of that is because they're not rehearsing it, they're not practicing it, but oftentimes it's just not the words they would use, how they would communicate. So I want you to find your lane. I want you to find your path and just be yourself. Don't try to be me. Don't try to be somebody else. And so I like to just call and say, hey, my name is Alex Pardo. I realize this is random and out of the blue. By the way, I'm addressing what is already in their head. Who is this person, or why are they calling? I'm actually calling because I came across your storage facility on Google. By the way, looks like a really, really nice site. Usually, as a side note, I'll find something to compliment them on. Came across your facility online and just wanted to reach out. And I've tested different things. Again, figure out what works for you. But I've done things like, look, I realize this is probably a shot in the dark, but I was just curious if you've ever thought about selling your facility or if you might consider an offer for your facility. That is one approach, which is more direct. An indirect approach, which can also work depending on your style, depending on your flavor and what resonates with you, is, same opening, identify who you are, why you're calling. Hey, I came across your facility. My name is Alex. I came across your facility online and just wanted to reach out and see if I could learn a little bit more about the business. You see, I'm looking to buy. In my case, when I started, I would tell people my wife and I are looking to buy my first storage facility, and I'd love to connect with an experienced, successful storage owner, right? That's it. No pressure, no pitch. You are just being curious. You're being yourself. You're being humble. As I'm recording this video, I'm standing, shoulders out, communicating with confidence. I want you to do the same thing. Don't be sitting down. Don't be hunched over, because the energy comes across in your voice. So I want you to smile, by the way, smile when you talk, because it does naturally tend to change your tone and energy for the positive. And here's the goal. Make it feel like a normal conversation with a neighbor. Okay, I talked about complimenting their facility. Hey, I'm looking at this thing. It looks like it's right next to the Dollar General. Or I might reference a landmark so that they know I'm looking at it. Say, it looks like clearly you've taken a great care of this place. Or I love the visibility you have on the main road. Find something that you can compliment them on. Now, if the facility looks really mismanaged, a lot of deferred maintenance, it looks like it needs a lot of work, then I wouldn't say, don't be disingenuous. Don't say, hey, it looks like you got a beautiful facility. But you can always typically find something to compliment them on, okay? And then you can even transition by saying exactly what I just said a minute or two ago. It's like, look, I'm actively looking to purchase a storage facility in this area, and I was hoping if I could get a little bit of guidance from an experienced owner like you. Very simple approach. It's genuine. It's real. And I think if you get comfortable with the opening, the rest of the conversation will naturally just take its form. It'll start to flow. And whenever you get stuck, fall back on acknowledging what they say and then bridging it with another question. Because that's your role here. It's the way that you start to build a relationship is you get to know the person, you ask questions, but you got to be careful. Don't do it in a way that it feels and sounds like an interrogation. Okay, that's really, really important. So like if I ask you a question and you respond, I don't want to just ask another question and then you respond and I ask another question. It just feels like a cold interview, and that's not what we're doing here. We're looking to connect, establish a dialogue, start to build some rapport here. I think people just tend to overcomplicate it, to be honest. But once you've opened the conversation, I think your next goal is to continue to focus on establishing a connection. And you do that, like I just mentioned, by asking open-ended questions that invite them to share more about their story, the facility, things like, hey, I'm curious, how'd you even get into the storage business? What do you like most about owning a facility? And what's been the biggest challenge for you lately when it comes to owning and operating your storage facility? Sometimes I'll ask, hey, listen, if you could have a magic wand, like what would your ideal scenario with your facility look like? And as they talk, just listen. And typically I'll have like a notepad, or I now use an iPad, but I'm just taking some notes, and I'm listening not just to what they're saying, but I'm listening to what's not being said. The way they're communicating, their tone of voice, something that they say that might not sound important, but actually is. And really all I'm doing is I'm just trying to understand who they are and how they feel about their business. Here's a super, super important thing. And I just touched on it, but I want to underscore it. I want to highlight this because it's so key. Don't just listen to the words coming out of their mouth. Listen to also what's not being said. Pay attention to their tone, their pace, their attitude. I was having a conversation with a storage owner not that long ago, and it was a regular, normal conversation. All of a sudden, he started talking about his, what was it? It was his gate, and how the gate was giving him a lot of issues. And all of a sudden, his tone shifted, and he started to get, not aggressive, but just like, you could tell he was perturbed. He was annoyed with his gate. And so I just jotted that down. I said, hey, is there tell me a little bit more about that. And I just got him talking about that. After that, I said, is there anything else like that that's not ideal or that's causing you some issues? And so those are little pain points. Those are things that owner wants a solution for. And that solution might ultimately be to sell the property, right? We don't know at this point yet, unless you've just come out and asked at the beginning of the call. But listen to how they're communicating. Do they sound proud of the facility? Is there a level of frustration with something like I just alluded to? Are they tired and burnt out or curious? These are little signals that often tell you more than the actual words themselves. So I just want you to be mindful of that. Be cognizant of not just the words coming out of their mouth and what you're hearing, but how they're saying it, what's their general attitude and tone, and just take some notes. You know, sometimes I'll connect with an owner and they mention, oh, I just got back from vacation, or, oh, I'm going to be traveling this summer, or I have grandchildren. Most people will just kind of like not really actively be listening, and they won't even catch those little things, but I'll write that down. Why? Because next time I connect with them, I'll bring up the grandkids. I'll find out when they got back from vacation, hey, what'd you love most? What'd you enjoy? Was it an epic adventure? Where are you going to next, right? I'm seeking for ways to connect with them, and I'm doing it in a genuine way. I'm not just like asking questions in order to like make them feel good, right? Like, no, I'm genuinely looking to get to know the person. And I think that's really, really important, because those little details can help you reconnect later, and you're just building trust over time, right? It's been said that people will do business with people they know, like, and trust. If you're taking notes right now and you're enjoying the video, that's a good sign. But if you want to move faster than everyone else watching this, you need the tools. Inside the Cashflow Maps membership, the entire system is unlocked, plus every single template, underwriting tool, and all the resources that go with it. And that is not available here on YouTube. Click the link in the description, create your free account, and get the full Cashflow Maps acquisition system in your hands. Now let's get back to the video. And that's honestly been my experience as well. And remember, in storage, relationships, that's your greatest capital. Relationship building is your greatest form of capital. If you get nothing else out of this, but you walk away with a belief that, hey, I need to invest in the right relationships, trust me when I tell you, you're gonna have a return on investment 100-fold. So focus on building relationships with the right people. And that's storage owners, brokers, wholesalers, other storage investors. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with the right people and be in the right community. But moving on here, let's start to transition. Once you've built some connection, now it's actually time to learn a little bit more about the facility itself. And I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with a caveat that sometimes people are not about connecting and answering your questions, and if they're open to it, they just want to kind of jump right into it. So you have to feel out the other person and their personality type. And so sometimes I might transition with like, hey, listen, just so I understand a little bit more about your business and your storage facility, do you mind if I ask you a few questions about the facility? Right? So I'll ask for permission, right? Make them feel that they're in control. But remember, the person asking the questions is actually the one in control of the conversation. So make sure that you're listening 80% of the time and only speaking 20% of the time. If you're doing most of the talking on these phone calls, you're probably doing it wrong, because when you talk, you don't learn anything. When you listen, you get to learn and you get to understand them, and that is your goal here. So now, before I share with you the different things you can ask them about the facility, understand that we're gonna get to this in the deal filter system, which is how do you quickly analyze or evaluate what we call underwrite a deal. Really, if I just had their monthly revenue or their annual revenue, I have enough to come up with a value for the facility and a potential offer. Ideally, I can get the revenue and I can get the unit mix. The unit mix is how many of each type and size unit they have. In other words, if they have 5x5s, 5x10s, 10x20s, 10x30s, how many do they have? Okay, I have 10 5x5s, and I have 15 5x10s, and I have 3 10x20s, and I have 1 10x30. That's the unit mix. So if I can get the revenue and the unit mix, for the most part, that's all I need, especially in an initial conversation. Now, if you feel like you've just built a connection with a person and that person's talking, ask them about their current occupancy. Hey, what's your current occupancy right now? See what they say. If you hear anything north of like 93%, in my opinion, that's actually a good sign. That means you're not charging enough. Sometimes I'll talk to storage owners and they will brag about being 100% occupied. But what they don't realize is that if they're 100% occupied, they're probably leaving money on the table. They could be raising the rents and generating more. I always seek to be 85 to 90% occupancy. I think that's a real good sweet spot. Find out about their rental rates. If they do have a website and you happen to see that while you're talking to them, ask them, hey, are the rates that you're showing on your website, are those current or have you updated those? And then in terms of the condition of the property, there's a couple things I always key in on, and that's the roof. The roof is going to be one of your biggest expense line items if you have to replace it or even repair it. So what age is the roof? In fact, one of our Storage Wins community members in our private online forum just asked this question. It's like, hey, when it comes to CapEx, what's referred to as capital expenditures, what are the questions to ask? And I always ask about the roof. What age is it? When was it last replaced? When was it last repaired? Or have there been any repairs? Are there any leaks? And so understand that if you're gonna buy a facility, you need to know how much shelf life that roof has. Are you gonna need to put a brand new roof on all the buildings in the next 5 years? Well, guess what? That could cost you $100,000+, and you're gonna need to account for that, all right? I always find out about the lighting and the cameras. If there's a gate, I'll take a look at the pictures and is it a manual gate? Does it have an operator? I like to find out about their management style. Are you running it yourself or do you have a manager or a third-party management company? Usually I find that they're managing it themselves, which is why oftentimes their expenses are so low. We'll talk about the expense ratio more in the deal filter system. Whenever I look at a property, I see, is there additional land and room for expansion? So these are just some of the things, but here's the biggest thing. You don't need every detail right now. Do not feel like you have to interrogate them and ask them 57 questions. You're nibbling at first. Hey, tell me a little bit about your facility. Let them talk. Right? What can you tell me about the facility? Just let them talk. Oftentimes when they talk, they're going to reveal a lot. And then depending on what they share with you, then you can get into more particulars. What's your current revenue right now? Like, what'd you do in revenue last year? What's your current year-to-date revenue? What's your unit mix? And then you can start drilling down into occupancy and things of that nature. So if you can just get the revenue and the unit mix, I think that's a win, especially to give you the ability to be able to analyze the deal, underwrite it, and even make an offer. And so don't get stuck trying to collect everything. Remember, this is about momentum. It's not about perfection. This is not a data call. You're just having a conversation and you're getting some information. You're getting to understand them, their facility, their story, and their situation. So once you understand the basics, it's time to explore value and potential pricing and stay curious, right? Don't be pushy. You want to stay curious and say, hey, Mr. Seller, just in an ideal world, what do you think you might want for the property? Notice my language is general and vague, not aggressive and pushy. It's like, hey, in an ideal world, what would you want for this property? And then listen and see if they give you a number, okay? Mirror it back. So let's say they say, hey, I want 1.2. Got it. So you'd want around 1.2 million. And then just pause and bite your tongue and don't say a thing, because silence can be your best friend in these situations. Most people are very uncomfortable with silence in a conversation, and they'll try to fill it with stuff they don't need to be saying. So mirror it back, ask the question, and then just bite your tongue. And if they hesitate, just don't say anything. Bite your tongue. Trust me, they will say something. And when they do, say, hey, listen, if we could pay your price, and I'm not sure that I could, right? I'm not saying we can. Would you ever consider taking payments each month instead of all at once? In other words, seller financing, right? Some type of terms offer. Hey, if I could meet your price, and I'm quite honestly, I'm not sure that I could, and I'll mention more about that in a second, but if I could pay your price and I'm not sure that I could, would you consider taking payments over time? So you get the benefits of cash flow without the headaches of management and ownership, right? So I'm inserting a benefit there. And then I'll just listen. That's how I naturally introduce seller financing. We'll talk about that more later, but I just wanted to kind of preview that. But notice what I said there. If we could pay your price, so I'm kind of leaning in a little bit, but then I'm doing a takeaway, and I'm not sure that I could. I'm taking a step back. All right. So whenever you build relationships, I shared this on one of our Storage Wins community calls. Think of if you are in a relationship with somebody. If you're married, you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case might be. Think of the first time that you met that person and you went on a date. Imagine if when you met them, like you were leaning in the whole time and you were like getting in their face as you were talking to them. Like naturally, what is that person going to do? Well, that person's going to take a step back. It's like, hey, you're invading my private space. Think of a conversation with somebody that you're just meeting the same way. You don't want to be too pushy and you don't want to be leaning in, but you want to kind of have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And that's how you get people to chase you, and you attract people and you don't chase them. Super important. Sometimes I'll ask a question like, hey, what would make this a good deal for you? Or hey, if you did decide to sell this, What do you think that might need to look like for you from a price perspective in terms of timing and the timeline? Like, tell me what's important to you. And oftentimes that question or a series of those types of questions can really reveal their ultimate motivation, which is far more important than their asking price, right? Sometimes people get so hung up on price that they miss everything else around the deal. Price is just one aspect of the deal. And oftentimes I say, I will pay their price as long as I can dictate the term or the terms. And that could be the interest rate, the down payment, the length of the note. There's a lot to get into there. We will. But most importantly, I just want you to understand that people oftentimes, they get to this point and then they drop the ball by ending the conversation without a clear next step. Never, ever, ever do that. One of the things I learned from a gentleman who you may know, probably know, a gentleman by the name of Alex Hormozy, a super successful entrepreneur. I learned something from him called BAMFAM, BAMFAM, BAMFAM. And BAMFAM is you always want to book a meeting from a meeting. Book a meeting from a meeting, BAMFAM. So before you hang up, lock in a specific next action, depending on how that conversation went. Hey, would you be open to me just taking a look at your deal, taking a look at your facility, seeing what I can come up with in terms of an offer? And I'm not sure if this is going to be the right fit for me. Again, I'm taking a step back, but why don't I run some numbers and why don't we reconnect later today or tomorrow or in the next couple of days, depending on the seller's personality type and how the conversation went. I always like to make sure I get their contact information in terms of their mobile number, email. I like to find out if they prefer to communicate by text, by phone call. Everybody's a little bit different, so I'll tend to lean on how they prefer to communicate to eliminate any friction and make it easier for us to continue the conversation, continue building a relationship. And then don't forget this one, because I have gotten leads and I've bought deals just by asking this one simple question at the end of the conversation. Hey, by the way, do you own any other storage facilities, or might you know anybody that has a facility they would consider selling? Now, look, am I saying the success ratio of this question in terms of them saying yes is high? No, it's not. But every now and then they'll say, actually, I'm thinking of, I'm slowly selling my portfolio. And that, boom, now they have other assets that they would consider selling. Or, sometimes I've heard, have you spoken to like Sally at ABC Mini Storage, just a couple of miles away? So sometimes they'll give you little clues, and now you can hop on Google, you can do your cash flow maps method, you can call, same exact thing, and rinse and repeat. And that single question has unlocked some deals for me throughout the year. So every single conversation should end with clarity and purpose. We don't know what the next step is. So as we start to put a bow on this particular video, I want to talk quickly about mindset, because this is where success really starts. And I don't care if we're talking about the direct contact blueprint, or if you want to refer to it as cold calling or storage or anything. Everything starts with mindset. Mindset is most of the game. Okay. Now remember this, you are not cold calling. You're connecting. Replace one C for the other. This seems to be like the video with the theme of C's. Replace cold calling with connecting. You're building relationships. You're just connecting with another human being. So do not be intimidated or feel intimidated just because they own a storage facility. I heard this once and it kind of stuck with me. It's you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. So every no is simply a not yet, right? If you think of the word not yet, it has no in there. So every no is just a not yet or not right now. Your goal is not to close the deal. Just like if you're in a relationship or if you've dated people in the past, your goal probably wasn't to get married the first time that you met that person. Just like your goal isn't necessarily to close a deal on this first call. You just want to collect a little bit of data. You just want to connect. Find out about the seller, their story, the facility, their situation. Start building a relationship, plant some seeds, and then with the follow-up is how we water the seeds that we plant, right? And if you do this consistently, that's when things can happen. Okay, you start to develop confidence. You communicate with confidence. In turn, people have confidence in you and they start to trust you. And then you develop a reputation. Opportunities begin to find you. You become like a magnet. All right. I've experienced this myself. I've worked with others and coached others who've experienced the same exact thing. So remember, you're not selling, you're sorting. Think about sorting between who's ready later, and who might know somebody who's ready. A coach of mine years ago told me, Alex, whenever you speak to somebody, they're either a buyer of real estate, a seller of real estate, a potential lender, or they know one of the above. All right. So think about that moving forward. You're just one meaningful conversation away from a completely different life and business. And so just seek to connect with people. And that's how you build relationship capital, which is, I've always said this, I'll continue to say it, the most valuable capital that you can raise or build. So look, as we wrap up here, here's your challenge for this week. I want you to pick up this incredible little magic device, okay? Pick it up and use it, because a friend of mine calls this money goggles. If you just understand where to spot the opportunity and you pick this thing up, you can create money, you can build your future and have everything you want. But you got to push past that initial fear or discomfort that you might have. So pick up the phone and make your first 10 calls. The quicker you can do this, the better. In fact, before you even move on, I would love for you to take what you've heard me share today. And trust me, I get it. You're thinking to yourself, I am not ready. Do not overthink it. Don't wait until everything is perfect. Just follow this framework I've shared with you. Be curious, be human, be yourself, push past that initial fear that you may have, and just be consistent, all right? And then start to track your conversations inside of your cash flow maps lead tracker. You can even add a column and start to track your contacts and make sure that you're documenting notes in there, or if you have a CRM, a database, a customer relationship management system, whatever you want to call it. And when you have your first meaningful conversation, share it inside the Storage Wins Facebook group and use the hashtag WIN, hashtag direct contact blueprint, and then tag me, right? So that I could celebrate this win. And it might feel and seem like a very, very small win to you, but it's hard to achieve the big win without stacking the small wins. And that's what this is all about. Remember, you are not chasing listings. You're creating opportunities, because I started this video with this and I'm going to end this video. Remember the 5 C's. Conversations lead to conversions. Conversions lead to contracts. Contracts lead to closings. Closings lead to cash and cash flow. So you don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. This is how you create momentum. This is how you start to build confidence and how you start to win in storage. So that is your action item. Pick up the phone right now if possible. Start making some calls, okay? You already, through your market map, through your buy box blueprint, you already know how to go out there and within a minute, locate mom and pop storage owners. Pick up the phone, go make the calls, and let's start to turn your list into your next storage win. All right, so there's one thing I want you to remember, and that's that deals don't come from spreadsheets. They come from conversations. If you get nothing else out of this, but you realize that conversations lead to conversions, conversions lead to contracts, and contracts lead to cash and cash flow. So your goal at the end of the day is to have as many meaningful conversations with storage owners as possible, because the more opportunities start to show up when you actually connect with them and you have conversation. Okay, and that could be with a seller who's thinking about retiring, maybe somebody who's tired of managing the property, or just an owner that wants to simplify their life. They don't want to manage and operate the facility. But what you've seen here is only a tiny slice of the entire Cash Flow Maps acquisition system. Now, I want you to go ahead and click on the link in the description below so that you can actually get access to the full system, neatly organized by modules, by videos. And then most importantly, aside from getting the complete step-by-step framework, you're going to get all the tools, the templates, and the resources that we actually use inside of our storage business that aren't available here on YouTube. So if you want access to the entire system, click the link in the description below and create your free Cash Flow Maps account. Like I said, everything is organized step by step. So I will see you on the inside.